being present for one another each day is something that isn't that easy, really. It's easier to walk by because I guess we have all got somewhere to be, most of us. We're all trying to live, and I believe most people are trying to do that the best they can. But it's the reason why it's important, I think, to be present it's hard to market that. It's hard to put it on a billboard. It's hard to say, hey, here's the tangible reasons to show you why. It's kind of invisible. It's this thing where you know what it feels like when someone takes the time for you and smiles at you and looks at you, acknowledges you, asks you genuinely how you are.
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth with me, Dan Burgess. Welcome to episode 11 of the Spaceship Earth podcast. And this episode is all about giving. Because it's December, it's actually the middle of December 2018. It's the season of giving, where it all goes completely bonkers in material giving, and we buy like crazy, and we buy things that we don't need for people we don't love with money we don't have. I think someone said something like that once. But yeah, it's the kind of giving season, and that's a whole. Well, I'm not going to get into that, but this is a episode which explores a different form of giving, and it's about giving what we're good at. It's about gifting our energy and our ideas and our skills and our time and our attention, maybe, to those who need it, frankly. And what is that all about? And why is it that maybe we're doing less of that than maybe we could be, and what is actually in that process of giving? What are the intangible, extraordinary things that can happen through the practice of gifting what we're good at, through giving to others things that we tend to do on a day-to-day basis anyway? Does that make any sense at all, or are you completely confused? Whatever you are in, whatever head state you're in right now, you're going to like this conversation. So this is a conversation with someone who I have been admiring from afar for a number of years, and is a chap, an amazing human called Joshua Coombes, who also you'll find through a hashtag which is connected to Joshua's mission and his work, which is hashtag do something for nothing. And just a quick side story here, or backstory, or whatever you call it. So I have been exploring, I guess, the practice of giving what you're good at through a side project that I have co-created and been involved in continually co-creating for the last it's been 8 years actually this month. And that's a project called Good for Nothing, and you can find that at goodfornothing.com, and I'll put all this stuff in the show notes. But essentially, Good for Nothing is a project which is about creating spaces and opportunities for people to give what they're good at to those who need it. And in the Good for Nothing case, it tends to be projects of social change, environmental activists, grassroots innovators, social entrepreneurs, people doing amazing stuff with very limited resources. And Good for Nothing brings talent and skills and energy and ideas around those people and creates spaces and experiences for great things to happen. And that process of gifting, of being generous with our creativity, has produced all kinds of things in the world, but also has created, I guess, all kinds of new relationships and ways of being in the world, which is really quite interesting. Anyway, I'm rambling. I know I've got to ramble on, but Joshua Coombes, I was drawn to Joshua's work, and I'll let we'll get into the podcast and he can talk about all of his story. But you may or may not know his work. But Joshua is he's a hairdresser by trade, but he's basically a social activist and a creative activist, I would say, and who started going out on the streets of London and cutting homeless people's hair for free, and through that starting to document stories of people that living on the street. And anyway, and he calls that, and he's kind of documented that work through this hashtag Do Something for Nothing. So you can see there's this thread with Good for Nothing. And so I've been following Joshua's work for a number of years. Really, his story is amazing, and we had a chance to catch up in person, actually, which isn't something I've done very often yet on this podcast. I tend to have done most of my podcast interviews via the web, apart from one I did in San Francisco in the car with Michael Stewart. So I hooked up with Joshua last week. Fantastic people at the Ministry, which is this amazing new co-working space just around the corner from the Ministry of Sound, by this launched by the same group. They gave us a space to actually record this conversation, and I caught up with Joshua. And so this story is all about this convo is basically an hour with Joshua to get a sense of his work and what he's been learning through this process. And we talked a little bit about, I guess, some of our shared experiences on this whole exploration of gifting what you're good at. And so it's the silly season, it's the giving season. This is, I guess, about when we gift what we're good at. And there's something really interesting in this inquiry into giving. And I really hope all this stuff starts to grow next year. We'll be rebooting Good for Nothing in the new year, which is quite exciting. Joshua has more plans for his Do Something for Nothing, and it would be amazing to see how this stuff could grow, because I get a sense actually there's lots of opportunity for people to kind of hack the art of giving, or the practice of giving, into our lives in more ways, and what beauty can come from that, because it feels like there's enormous healing potential in gifting what you're good at. So enough from me. I hope you enjoy this. This is episode 11 with Joshua Coombes. Do Something for Nothing. Welcome to the Spaceship Earth podcast. Thanks for making it, Joshua.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thanks for waiting around.
That's all right. I mean, you've literally been cutting hair, right?
Yeah, I've just come away from Victoria and London Victoria Station. There's someone I met called Will, and I was cutting his hair on the street. That's what I do most weeks, and that's this guy's experiencing homelessness, and I give people haircuts, and just literally came away from that, and I've come down here to talk to you. Yeah.
How do you? Because we'll get into all of that in a minute. But how do you? I guess, do you sort of like? How do you say yes and no to the opportunities? Do you just sort of intentionally say, right, this is the time I'm going out?
Actually, it's become every day, like a lot of creatives and freelance people and anyone else, in the city or lots of other big cities, every day is very different for me. And I have always, like right now in my bag, I've got my camera, my laptop, and my barbershop. It's tiny, but I fit it all in this bag, and it's like, and that means that whatever I'm doing that day, I can stop when I've got the time on the streets, and also when I'm meeting someone about anything to do with the project, and Do Something for Nothing and the hashtag, but also, to document it all. The camera's really important for what I do, taking these photos and videos and capturing the moments. So it just means I can kind of go from place to place.
It's all there, and you can just whatever emerges and unfolds.
Yeah, and obviously I have some kind of routine. Like I'm not like there's every day's busy doing lots of different things. But it's just it means that I can be free with the way I kind of when I go out and do this on the street.
Yeah. So you're like, I mean, if you're known, or at least like if people like write back, they tend to say, I pull this out, the man who gives free haircuts to the homeless. But obviously, there's a lot more going on here, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because it was. I mean, it's been about 3 years, so I guess to give some context for anyone who's going to listen to this,
exactly.
Like it's So about 3 years ago, I was still working in a salon, doing men's hair, women's hair, and I started going out and cutting on the street for people, and that just started with one guy, and it kind of became this addictive thing for me, which was just like all these myths about homelessness, and the people who were out there were all dissolved very quickly, and I wanted to tell these stories to other people. So from posting on Instagram, it was always this hashtag Do Something for Nothing. So from the beginning, I wanted it to be more than just, hey, I'm cutting hair for someone, because actually it's really the conversation. It's really listening. It's really how much I get out of it, as well as this free thing I'm giving. Because truth be told, like, the haircut grows out, and it's an amazing way to visually kind of dissolve that stereotype, but actually it's the time exchange which is the most important, not only for the person but for me, and that's always the thing that kind of kept me coming back. So do something for nothing is 4 words that kind of mean human connection, but it's your version of that. Like, when you do what you love doing, I found it through something simple like a haircut. When you do it through your passion and turn that into a way of, you know, whatever your thing may be to go out in your community, it might even be homelessness, it might be something different. I think then it's not really volunteering your time in like the traditional sense of giving up your time. It's like you want to go out and do it. I love going out and doing what I'm doing. Yeah.
What in the first instance, can you sort of go back to that?
Sure.
So the first haircut you did, I mean, what was motivating you at the time? What was the sort of tip that you thought, right, I'm off, I'm going to just do this and see what happens?
I think it's important to recognize, like, it came from quite a negative place, actually, of feeling quite helpless. And I mean, I think there was 2 things that I can quite clearly see that was happening in me, and that was seeing, you know, all these people on the street, whatever city I went to, and the problem of knowing what to do with that and how to approach that and how to reach out and what can I do as one person, because you see the statistics and it's like, bloody hell, well, homelessness has doubled in the last 5 years, and you know, you see such affluence in a city like London that contrasts that, and it makes it even more scary to see the way people are forgotten and they're invisible. But there was that side of it, which is kind of the one end, and the other side was really in me, what moved me, and that was kind of the thinking so much about what I should be doing, where I should be going. I mean, I've always been a people person. I used to play music before I cut hair, and like naturally, I've always been like a really social person. But it was, you know, when you get tied up in your head about those things of like just worrying about yourself, just worrying about we don't even do it on purpose, but you just end up in this kind of tight spot in your mind, and that's usually when you've been thinking about you and I and putting that ahead of everything else. And that's kind of what was happening with me. I needed to like let go of my own bullshit and like drop all that stuff, and I was finding that through these people I was meeting. Like, you know, when you go out and you do something like this, I think something quite amazing happens, which is like you have to get out of your comfort zone with someone completely, and it's like it's for me, it was my way of like almost like helping myself through helping people, and that's a feeling that is important to recognize, you know.
It reminds me of I can't remember this guy's name, but he used to, when I was thinking about when we sort of started with the Good for Nothing project, was this idea of cultivating your dissatisfaction. It's like this is something that was like getting you kind of twitchy, thinking you weren't kind of like finding difficult, you know, or just maybe there was an edge there that's just making you feel uncomfortable. And I guess like you're seeing more and more people on the street. How do I feel about that? And it strikes me this whole thing of like, you know, the sort of being present. I guess I sort of feel this really really strongly at the moment in the world, or at least in the context I'm moving in and around the UK. Is like, you know, being visible, being really present, because there's, you know, we're sort of walking by a lot, and I'm using that metaphorically as well as with the sort of homes in the street. But it feels like there's, you know, how do we open up to these things that are around us? That, do you know what I mean? That are sort of
for sure. I mean, that's the, you know, the best way to put it really is being present for one another each day is something that isn't that easy, really. It's easier to walk by because I guess we have all got somewhere to be, most of us, and we're all trying to live, and I believe most people are trying to do that the best they can. But it's the reason why it's important, I think, to be present it's hard to market that. It's hard to put it on a billboard. It's hard to like say, hey, you know, here's the tangible reasons to show you why. It's kind of invisible. It's this thing where you know what it feels like when someone takes the time for you and smiles at you and looks at you, acknowledges you, asks you genuinely how you are. Like, it's a small thing, but yet that stuff does ripple. This guy Will, whose hair I just cut, he actually said to me, he was like, it's funny, isn't it? Because like, you know, when you do something for someone or you do something nice, I don't think you're not supposed to realize the effect of that in that moment. It happens afterwards, doesn't it? And he said that, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. I think, you know, when you're present for someone else, it might not be this immediate transaction of like, oh, they didn't smile back at me, or they weren't gracious for whatever I did, but it's like, it's that knock-on effect that ripples afterwards that's more interesting to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think being present for one another, especially when you're running around a city and it can feel a bit mental sometimes, I think those moments can be, I found for me, very, very important.
Yeah. I'm guessing like, because again, the sort of, you can feel this narrative of like people not like me, I mean, these people aren't like me or not like us, or, you know what I mean? That whole sort of, but I guess like, through the work you're doing out there, the stories you're hearing, I mean, you must have a ton of learnings or that you've experienced through doing this.
Yeah, honestly, Dan, the last 3 years of my life, I'm 31 now, and I've learned more about me in the last 3 years I've been doing this than I have for like the 28 before that. Like truly, and I think that's maybe like an obvious one for some people, but I think it kind of through. I mean, because I guess what I do is it's I travel to different cities. It's not just in the UK. I work a lot in the US and been out to India recently and South America before, and it's kind of all this has been cutting hair on the street for different people, and it's weird how this thing, like a small thing like a haircut, really when that boils down to it, is just this time that you're given to someone. It's like it kind of transcends all of the, I guess, like the political and economical surface of whatever that may be, and you do, as humans, you learn a lot about you. Whilst I've been going out doing this, I've learned so much about me through these people, because you hear so many stories, you hear people from all kinds of different walks of life, and I think I could have, tried to wiki page all that. I'm not, I mean, it's like there's different things that you can like knowledge is something, I suppose. Like I just know that I'm interested in that too. You might be interested in many, many different things, but for me, I'm so interested in people.
Yeah.
I'm so interested in the way we tick and the way we interact, and I think the best way to do that is to just go out and get that experience through people,
Yeah, and I guess, and I'm sure you've got many examples, but it always strikes me, at least my sense of the interactions I've had with people on the street. It's just what a fine line it is between, like, I say this to my kids. I've got quite young kids, and we'll often stop in Bath and chat to. There's a couple of guys on the bridge there, always there, and But I remember a couple of years ago, they'd be talking to me about, how do you get homeless? And I go, well, there's many ways. But what I try and say to them, it's like, it's a super fine line between having what we have and not having it, I don't know. And I guess you've probably heard so many stories that around that, or
it is, and for sure. And there is reasons, as long as you're of the reasons why someone might end up on the street, and someone might end up, experiencing homelessness and not having a roof over their head. And I think it always boils down to one underlying sort of thing for me, which is a lack of infrastructure in some way in their life that maybe other people have. So your fallbacks, like the biggest thing that I've found is like, I mean, for instance, I'd go and stay with my mum and my sister and my other sister and a cousin and friend. I'd really have to annoy a lot of people, or like really.
You've got a network kind of around you.
Like people around me who I know. I'd go through this real sort of like dot to dot of where I could end up before I'd really broken or burnt every relationship, and that's it. Some people, that's just one or two of those dots. Some people, it's that sister who they haven't seen for a while, and it's a friend, and then their girlfriend gets annoyed and says, when's he leaving, or she's leaving, and they're out on the street. So that's one important thing to recognize. I think the other, really, more than anything, I've realized, Dan, is that I just the psychological side of this stuff is just, it's so incredible how much we all know and we all realize, like, what it's like when something bad happens to us in our life, whether that's a close one, someone who's dear to us, whether that's that could be anything, but it could be a breakdown of a relationship in some way. Like, we all know how that is like a all-consuming pain that can take you, and you have to be as strong as hell for everyone around you. And it's like, anyone who can recognize that, you can recognize the trauma that comes with that psychologically, but then sometimes that's coupled with, of course, that sometimes does make you want to drink more. It does make you want to do this. It does make you not want to work. It's like, I just think I've just seen how there's these things that we can all relate to that psychologically are occurring as well with people I meet who, some people just, it's there's many reasons that lead someone there, but ultimately if you've lost hope for some reason, like if all you can stack up over the last few years is bad memories and that's what you can recall, like, bloody hard, that's quite a mountain to climb. And sometimes I picture it like this kind of horizon. Like for some people, it's like hope is like probably closer than other people. Imagine if like your hope is like, well, it's all right, mate. It's like way over there. Visualize that mountain over there, and can you see it? It's just beyond that. You got to climb that thing before you can get to where you're going to feel a bit better. And it's tough. That's a tough battle to go. I don't know whether I can't even contemplate the idea of getting there yet.
Yeah.
So it depends on where you want to go with it. I know that's like the deepest side of it, but I feel like like for me, the political is important. The actually transition and solution-based stuff is important to me too. But more and more I learned that there's a lot of hard work I think that needs to be done, that can be done for support in like in a way that is going to take a bit more work. It is going to take a little bit more bespoke kind of treatment for people to work through those things.
And I guess that comes back to this whole, like, the need for community, right? And the need to be listened to. And I don't know if you've come across Mark Nepo's work, but I heard him the other day and he was talking about, like, through kindness, we find kinship. So like that's when, and actually they're linked as words, and so by the process when we start to build relationship and empathy with others and other things, and that's the stuff, because I'm, with the work we've been doing with Good for Nothing, it's sort of where that project is getting to, because it's effectively it's very different. It's different to what you do in terms of the actions people take, but effectively it's about gifting what we're good at, and to those that need it.
I feel there's so many similarities, and not just in like name as well. But I feel like, but honestly, with what you guys are doing and what I've only seen from afar so far, and I'm meeting you for the first time today, I feel like it's really important to recognize that like there's so many different levels of what you can do as a person, and for some people it's not going to be like direct as far as like areas that you're compassionate towards. I've realized that like you doing you is the most important thing, and I think that's why using the things you love doing, your passions, your skills, like when you recognize those, it might not be a way that you can directly, like if you're amazing at like branding, you can't maybe go up to like a elderly person in a home or like a homeless person and go like, hey, let me it's like,
let me sort your strategic marketing out.
Right. But at the same time, those skills, like, wow, they can be used for so much good for people who maybe it's not even about, there's no better or worse than any of this stuff. I just feel like whether you're great at embroidery or whether you're great at like accounting, I think it's like tapping into how that can help in the best way is good for everyone. And the ripple of that, it might not be the hand-on-hand touch, but like that really doesn't matter, because like it's affecting people and it's positively affecting people, and that really is the same in every way. That's
And you're so do something for nothing. So you've captured a lot of people's imagination through the work you do, and how are you seeing? Are people being? Are they being? Of course, everyone's being inspired, but I guess like, are you hearing stories of people that are finding their own take on what you do, or you're helping them get out and do stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I've often felt really motivated, and then also had to work out, how positively, because I mean, the best way to describe this is like, say I post something on Instagram and it gets like a few thousand likes. Like I do think about like, I wonder how many of those love hearts and likes and comments equate to like boots on the ground love or action, And it's probably not that many, and it probably is like, if you really do the stats on that. But I used to be in a punk band, and like if we sold like one CD, the gig was like worth it, and I've got quite a resilience for that, where I definitely see through the like few years now that I've been doing this, the response I've got from people has been incredible, and that's been like through direct posts on the hashtag. So the way this works is basically it's this portal, of course, like any hashtag, where it's not like Do Something for Nothing isn't an organization, it's not a not for profit, it is just like an open space for people to use, and it's amazing. People have got involved, like Jade, who she looks after animals, she's a vet, and she started coming out on the street with me, and she looks after homeless people's dogs, connects with her owner, refers them to a vet. There's a guy, Chris, in New York, who started going and playing guitar and earning people some money, and music's a great way to get involved. But there's also been, there was a yoga teacher who was going into a rehab center and using her skills to get people's endorphins going. There was a girl who went into elderly home, and some people who didn't have any family should go in and should have lunch with them and telling them their story. It's like, it's all these things. But anyone in your community might feel like they need an arm around them. It doesn't have to be as direct as just like, well, there's that guy on the street.
Yeah, right.
That's the way I saw it. But yours might be very different. Whether that's young people, older people who need, So, yeah, I've seen a great response, but it feels it's an amazing feeling, because it feels like every time I wake up every day, it feels like the beginning. And by that I mean I'm so connected with what I'm doing because I go out and see these people, and that's where it starts, these connections I make on the street with people. But then through this hashtag, the way that people keep on picking this up and people still want to know about this, it's about trying to bring in all that momentum now and harnessing it and actually taking it forward in more of a direct way, which I'm trying to get help off people for that, because I'm just like, I'll run around all day long, like catching and sharing these moments. And it's, it's only me, and I'm trying to, get help of some amazing people now to try and make this, really what I think it potentially could be. Which we should do a good for nothing on do something for nothing, shouldn't we? Yeah, that'd be great. Here at the ministry next year. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and I'm all about. I don't know how you feel and how you've had your experiences in the past, but like, do you feel like you're in like this any kind of competitive do good space with anyone else? Do you feel like have you ever felt like there's been this kind of that element to it? I mean, when we started doing the good for nothing thing, so my equivalent of your cutting hair moment would have been, I was working in a creative communications agency, loads of talent, coming up with fantastic ideas for big corporate companies to help sell more shit that people didn't need. And it was good people, nice, that's what we were doing. And was there a Prosecco fridge? Yeah, it probably was. And I guess what I was seeing at the time, I was always, I'm an environmentalist, I guess. I was always sort of pulled towards what's going on the ground, what's really going on in the world that we should be, that was speaking to me. And what I'm starting to see is more and more, just amazing people doing extraordinary things with no resources on the ground. They could be food growing projects, they could be pollution projects, they could be vulnerable kids projects, homeless projects, whatever it is. You don't have to look very hard to find all these people doing extraordinary things. So the idea of Good for Nothing was, well, what could we bring all this talent that works day to day on big business and put them in with these kind of projects and create a space where this exchange of skill and energy and ideas can happen, and we can help these people make bigger dents in the problems that they're trying to solve. And that was the birth of it. And it was an experiment, and it kind of, we did it once and it went really well, did it again, and it just started growing and more people wanted to do it. The challenge of it at the time, and it still is just, it's sustaining it. We ended up trying to create a chapter-based model. We were in London. We were like, actually, this could work anywhere. So we built some tools that people could use. We kind of created this kind of agreement that anyone can pick it up and play with it and run with it and point it at their own issues in their own cities. But also so at the time, I guess it felt like there wasn't much else that was sort of doing this. That has changed, and that's a good thing. Sure, because you want more. It's like, because I guess what one of the things I've discovered, which I'm sure you've discovered through your work, is that what I started to realise was that the work that we would do for these projects, although important and useful, what I started to realise was it was the relationships and these new connections that were happening. And I would say a sort of awakening that was starting to happen in people who were putting themselves into these experiences, listening to somebody who is dedicating their life towards, I don't know, isolated elderly people and the creativity they were bringing into that problem, then applying their skills to help that person, even for a couple of hours. And actually what we were seeing is what that does to people, and what the giver is often more moved than those who receive. And it sort of shifts people's perception of what is, I can do more stuff for nothing. So I'm interested in this whole space of like what it is to do stuff for nothing. Yeah, it's I think it's. I haven't answered your question at all, but but you have actually, through talking about it, it's great to hear more about it, because you kind of have really, because it's not, it sounds like very similar to me in the sense that like it's kind of a broader look about linking up many different elements to try and make them work, and focusing on like, you know, the strengths of like, you know, playing almost like a bridge. And I've realized that, I mean, I don't feel like I'm in a zone of like competitive social good charity, and I feel that does exist a bit, and I think everyone gets into this stuff for the right reason. But what's really great is I've realized that it's not that I'm not, as I said earlier, like solution based, but I've realized the most important thing that I can do and that I can provide right now in at present is like accessibility is like such an important word. And I think there's, you know, I don't know the exact solution to homelessness and how to get people off the street. I understand that someone might be thinking, well, how's a haircut going to help? And what's the longevity in that? And what about a long-term plan and policy and bills to reduce this? And I'm like, that's all great. And that means you should get into policy. And that means you should get in. And I need people like Crisis or whoever it is, whatever homeless charity, like banging on the door and saying, hey, like, what's going on with our latest, you know, bill and our local MPs? But for me, I'm like, I know there's so many thousands of people who are walking around each day who feel very disconnected, and there's a big social gap. And it's like, I think that's happening not because people are mean, and not because a larger percent of people don't give a shit about each other. I think there's just a disconnect. And I think that more often than not, it's about telling a new story about this kind of stuff. And I think creatively, that's an amazing tool in itself. I think, you know, before any real change happens, I think opinions have to change. And I've realized that through this simple thing like a haircut or this hashtag and do something for nothing, it's resonating with people in a way that it's really nothing to do with me. Like, I am Joshua with this, like, whatever I look like when I post these photos, if there's one of me cutting hair. But the truth is, like, it ain't about me whatsoever. It's not. It's about them seeing this moment between two strangers who are just people on that day, sharing something that's a real thing that they want as well.
Yeah.
And that's what fills me with hope. Is like, people who just need that edge, that door opening of like, what's their thing, what is their way of feeling a bit more connected in their life and feeling like a bit more part of that community. It's like, I think that's where you do need a bit of help sometimes. You do need to identify that. And I think providing stories and inspiration, and then actually almost rudimentary ways of saying, write down those things you love, and parallel to that, write down the areas you're compassionate, and let's try and join the dots. I think that stuff is that's a great place to start for me. And it's like, I want change in a bigger way, but I'm very happy with that being the challenge of today for me, and finding today's answer, you know.
Have you found on your journeying that you people talk about or referencing this kind of doing things for money versus nothing? So one of the kind of learnings for me and my buddies in the Good for Nothing experiment has been this idea of we're sort of in this kind of monetary paradigm now, right? Everything has been monetized, right? It's like pretty much everything, you know, like, you know, most of nature has been turned into a product. Every kind of human kind of relationship has been turned into a service. You know, there's not much left that sort of hasn't been sort of put a price on it, you know. And that's had massive impacts on how we kind of show up in the world. We're sort of, many of us, at least in the UK, are put through a kind of an education system which tends to suggest it's a race about getting ahead of everyone else. You know what I mean? And I've seen it in the professional world through, in the early days, you know, people very protective of ideas, or, you know, can I do this? Should I be paid? You know, all this kind of stuff. And I guess, of course, we have, you know, money is a you know, we need money. We're in this system that requires that, and it requires us to sort of participate in that world in order to sustain ourselves. But the thing I'm really interested in is what's the role of generosity and kindness as actually, and how can we encourage more of that? Because we know that not only it's something that's needed in a society that's become totally monetized, but also it's good for the person, right? Yeah. When we give, we feel good. But do you get this sort of, you hear this dialogue around money and...
For sure. Yeah. No, I completely get where you're coming from with that. And I think about it a lot too. And I need to make money. Like, I quit my job like 2 years ago. And I say quit, I didn't like walk out. Like, you know, it was like I'd used all my vacation. I was doing my thing on the street and cutting hair. And it was like, there was these different trips that were coming up, and I had to make the decision to leave. And it is a bit of a struggle, you know, and definitely last year it's got better. I give keynote speeches now. That's a great way to be able to like pay the rent, because I'm not a charity number or anyone, and like I'm always hustling for that on my laptop. So I've realized more and more I actually want money. I've just let myself off the hook to be able to go, no, I really want to make money, and I want to make what feels like a reasonable amount of money, so I can continue doing what I want to do. But I think what you're saying is, I think it's clearly defined into a couple of categories, and I think in this instance I'm going to use the example of like using happiness as those categories. And in studies of well-being, you have hedonic happiness and what's called eudaimonic happiness. And like obviously the hedonism of everyday life is of course what we're talking about. You need that stuff. I like going in and buying things that make me feel good too, you know what I mean? Like I like buying with us whatever. Like I live a fairly humble life, but I'm not saying like I like eating nice food. I like whatever that may be, going on trips, traveling. That's going to look different for everyone. Having money to also not only at the basic level look after yourself, support you and your loved ones, and care, you know, the people you want to care for. Like money is needed. You're right. That's the system we're in. But the message I think that's important is, on that scale, it's also, you know, it's important to recognize that there's this whole other trajectory of your life, which isn't the success that's dictated by money. It very much is your self-growth and your self-actualization and who you are, you know, and how you're connected to yourself and other people. And as I mentioned earlier, that's the stuff you can't advertise, really. You can't I think you can, more than ever right now, tell a story that moves people creatively, that's turning up on their phone in minutes. That's so positive, because I just know that story has to be told in a deeper way, that it's okay to make money. It's great to make money. Be successful in every single way on that trajectory of your life. But remember, all the while, there is something in you that I feel like it's important to go and give your time to other people. It's important to share those moments that do cost nothing. In a monetized world where everything is sold, it's like, that's your kind of rebellion, if anything, isn't it? It's going, well, shit, all I've got left is time. All I've got left that you can universally trade in as a commodity, whatever the equity is, like time. It's like an exchange that is not like having that conversation, listening. Yeah. If there's an act that follows from that or is part of that bridges that, amazing. But probably is less about random acts of kindness, quote unquote. It's more about just recognizing that you're right. You're not doing these things to pat yourself on the back because I should be a good person. It's because it feels good. And it's healthy for you.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Is like, you know, if there's something in the, you know, if actually being, you know, gifting a bit more of ourselves on a regular basis is kind of like sort of, it's like health insurance. Yeah. It's not only good for our community, it's good for everyone, but actually it's good for you, you know. I mean, and that's what I find so fascinating about this stuff.
Do you think it's okay to recognize that? I think people have a hard time, and people have a hard time talking about it in that way, because they might think that's not cool, it shouldn't be for you. Yeah. You know, they might think, well, it should just be a kind act, should just be between, you know. And I'm like, I understand the mindset of like, people talk about giving and taking stuff as if it's this kind of directional, just like a line between you and the person of give and take, but it's actually more of a circle of like kind of you. It's okay. It's so important to recognize that you know, what you get from it, because that keeps me going out as well as doing it to help someone. And it's like, yeah, I'm all about trying to get that message out there. And I'm very happy to tell people, because like I don't mind talking about the fact that it's me doing it, because I'm willing to have enough of an ego to like spearhead this, to drop my ego, to be able to give this to other people. Because it's a weird thing. It is like, I go up and I give a talk about all these people I meet and all these different things I'm doing, and someone could definitely be listening to that going, all right, mate, Jesus, you're telling us enough stuff you're doing to try and help people, like, you know, like, well done you. And I feel like I'm willing to take that on board, to realize that I got to tell people about this, because it's not about me. Yeah. Like, it's not about me. It's like, if you think it's about me, that's okay, but it's really not. It's like, I'd be stupid to not tell the stories of the people I meet, because those messages are very real. The people who get in touch with me and say, shit, I now talk to that guy who I walked past for 6 months. I now stop for this person and do this, and all these individual stories of people specifically with, say, homelessness, that have like completely changed their perception. I'm like, yeah, that's, think what you want about me, because I'm willing to like have that. Yeah, you know.
I mean, it's mad. I mean, just again going back to the homeless piece, but I mean, I sort of feel this viscerally with my kids. Like if I'm walking past someone on the street with my kids, or as we you know, we see trains of people, what is it that they're feeling as a youngster, a young kid? What does this kind of way of being signal to a youngster? Do you know what I mean? That's what you do. You sort of don't acknowledge, which I find, and again, I'm not sort of claiming to be an angel here. I try and engage wherever I can, but I'm just interested, again, as a culture, what's this doing as we start? You know what I mean? If this is acceptable.
Sure,
you know
right?
I mean?
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's a really good point. I often think about, I go back to like being a kid and ask my mum the same question, and I think when I'm cutting hair, wherever that will be, it's always younger people who are more just, if there's just a real intrigue and people kind of pull away from their parents and wonder what's going on, and sometimes they'll pull back, and sometimes they'll come over and they'll talk, and it's that innocence where you don't have those stigmas yet. You don't have your own barrier yet, because that's the most important thing. Is it's usually your barrier that you've put up,
right,
consciously or subconsciously, opinionated or non-opinionated, of like, oh, how can I don't know how to approach this, or I don't like this person because of this, or I do like them but I don't know what to do. And it's like, all that stuff's in you. It's all your own thing. They have
your
zero
story
to do with that. Yeah, that's your own story. And I think, to your point, it's important to give a good message about how we treat people in our community, but it's also important to recognize that this thing is so subjective to the person that you are seeing at that time. So the best way that I think about it is, and I think in talking about it, really is a good time to mention now that, like, I don't try and glorify people in this position either. I don't try and like demonize them as well. Like, I try and this is about a real look at something that gets painted a certain color, and I feel it's just about humans and people. Like, flip the word homeless to homed, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just how would you work out, your kind of ways that you're going to interact with anyone who's in the home community. I mean, it's like, well, there's going to be that guy who's amazing, who you connect with straight away, who for whatever reason was really nice to you. There's going to be that person who was really moody, and you probably don't want to talk to them much that day, but maybe tomorrow they'll be in a better mood. It's like, if someone's on the street, it's the same for me. It's like, not every time I go out and cut hair for someone, there's this beautiful soundtrack playing, amazing human moment. It's like, no, catch me on a Monday morning before coffee, and it's not a pretty sight. You know what I mean? It's like, we are all not only different people, but we are also different people each day, sometimes depending on the weather of life. So it's like, I've just grown thicker skin with that stuff, and I've just gone like, I just believe in the individual so much that it starts and stops with them each time, and that goes for every person, and that's not a difficult thing to navigate for me. It's just, I'm talking to you right now.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. And there'd be no part of who you are right now in this conversation that I'd apply to anybody else I just met afterwards. I wouldn't be going, well, they're anything like you. And I think that with this whole thing of homelessness and the way we see people, it's like, that just happens time and time again. The amount of times I've heard someone say, oh, but I once gave this guy like £1 and he didn't want it. Or I tried to buy him some food and he told me to do one. Or actually I saw he's spending it on drugs or whatever. There's all these things that add up to, I'm not helping that person again.
Sure.
And by that they mean anyone who's on the street ever again. It'd be like, well, if you flip that again to homed, and you had a bad situation with somebody in any other part of your life, and you suddenly said, well, anyone who's got a house or a roof over their head, like, I'm dealing with them ever again. That's it. I don't. It's like, it's a really simple analogy, but it's like, it's important to recognize that's what you're doing if you're thinking about this thing as a blanketed term of just homelessness. It's like, it's just not how it is. It's just not the way it is. It's illogical. It's not even logical to think about it that way. Yeah. Like, each person's like, yeah, of course there's going to be more people on the street who are taking substances because it's a fucking hard way of living. Yeah. Like, there's pain there. There's all kinds of stuff. Did you see this? Did you see this fake homeless campaign?
Do you know, it's funny you mention it, because my kids, there was this thing on BBC.
Yeah.
I didn't see, they watched something on iPlayer the other day, and actually one of them said to me, like, I had to go out, and I said, what happened? What was your takeout? And she said to me that, she said, like, even there were some that they thought because they had a bed in some hostel that they were skanking the system, but she was 8, and she said, but as far as I could see, that's not a home that they had. It was still really bad. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. So that's it. It was so funny on like a number of levels, because, and the girl who was presenting it, I wish I remember her name, but she was great actually. But
it was just this whole thing where there was this guy in my blessed home of Devon, near Torquay somewhere. So proud of that. But he came up with this whole fake homeless campaign where he was outing people who were like he was getting up in the morning at like 5:30 a.m. or 6 a.m. and driving around seeing who was genuinely sleeping on the street.
Right.
Because if not, you were fake homeless.
Right.
He was taking photos of them, tagging them, writing a story. This person is fake homeless on Facebook. Do not help them.
That's a lot of energy, isn't it?
There's a lot of energy to do that, and more than anything, I could berate him for all kinds of reasons, that are personal. But rather than do that, I think it's just important to recognise again, like that whole program while it was going on, the both sides of that narrative. I was just like, it's just completely flawed, because it's just like it just takes away from the name and the individual. It just takes away from that person and their story. It's just the veneer of what's going on here. And understand politically that's the way we have to talk about it, because it's like it's an issue that we need to face. But it's like, and especially stories as well. The amount of times I film with different news channels and stuff like that, and they really want their certain story of this, and it's got to look quite like polished of the way they. It's just, unfortunately, this is long form. It's not headlines. It's not even a BBC Three half an hour piece. It's like a long form thing of like, you want to do this stuff? It's going to take a while. Let's take 10 people, let's look at all of them, and let's press rewind on for 5 years on each one of their life and see what happened. And let's talk to people who actually knew them during those periods. And like, bloody hell, then you might get a decent look at what's really going on.
It's tough, isn't it? I guess one of the things that strikes me with again, it's this sort of, and this isn't at home. This is just a general human to human thing that seems to be sort of maybe where some of the problem is that we're not. It just feels like the art of listening and listening to each other and being able to be heard. Whether you're in whether you have a roof over your head, even or you don't. It feels like that whole is I don't know. It feels like that's a whole thing. I think that feels like it's part of this. Part of this problem, it's hard for anyone to be maybe truly heard these days. How they're really feeling about stuff, and you know what I mean.
We see that. We see it in all kinds of ways, and it's the thing that you know when someone's really listening to you, don't you? You know, and I've had to work on that as well. Like that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned is to not immediately speak when someone speaks afterwards. And I've learnt that with filming as well. I've gone through this urge to want to just be engaged in the conversation and not really thought about why, and being able to like just listen and actually take in that person, what they're saying. It's not that easy, but when you do it, it's a nice exchange when that happens. And I think you're right, homeless or not homeless, like that's important for everybody. We see that come out in all kinds of ugly ways in our society when it goes wrong, and I think that's probably most of the time it's the nucleus of it, because at least people are going to have all kinds of psychological problems, but at least if you're heard, if you actually feel like there's someone in your life that is listening to how you feel genuinely, I think that's at least that's something. I think that's probably one of the. I think there's a beginning of any journey that leads to like a really bad place, is just feeling like you were alone in the world, like you were completely isolated. Right. That can lead to all kinds of different things that aren't going to look very pretty.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And then when you think about it, you can see how quickly people can get to that point of loneliness as well, because if no one is truly able to is listening or hearing your voice.
But that's why I really believe in creativity and expression as like the best way to do that. Like I don't see any, for me there's no rules to this, and sometimes that gets me told off, and I don't mean that in a way of like, but there are some sectors where it's like I get there's a certain way of doing things and there's do's and don'ts, but the beauty of my position is like I can go out and I can cut someone's hair and I can stick a camera in their face, but I know that it was consented in that moment.
Yes,
and I don't do that to everyone, because that might not be the case sometimes. There's plenty of things I do that don't go on Instagram, I can put on an art show. Me and my pal Jamie, we've started this thing called Light and Noise, which is like a do something for nothing art show this year, and we went out to LA, Skid Row in Los Angeles. Some people know as like the epicenter of homelessness. It's tent city in the US, and this is in a affluent city like LA. It's incredible the amount of people who are on the street there, and you know, when you don't know what else to do and it's such a shit show, like I think art is like, all right, well, let's start a new conversation. We rented out a gallery space, and Jamie was meeting people on the street when I cut their hair, and he was painting portraits of them, and in bright colours and little quotes, and you should see his work. It's really fascinating. We worked with a photographer, and I screened a little documentary, and it was this evening to say, all right, holy shit, we don't know what to do. We can certainly shine a light and make some noise about this. We're not coming in because we know the answer. We're going, if you're an artist, if you're a creative person, that's how it will happen. Counterculture, like that is your, like, you can't, I feel like this, so many people feel so hopeless about everything. And then I see the amount of creative people in the city like London or LA or people like, I'm just like, what? Like there's like ideas, but plenty.
Right.
And like
and
a
energy.
new idea can happen whenever.
Yeah.
Like imagination for the next thing that changes things is like, it comes from that stuff, and this art show we put on in Dalston now, and in Brixton this year as well, a couple of months ago, and it was really nice to see the way people came together. It was like a touch point for all the stuff that happens with Do Something for Nothing on Instagram. It was like, you can come and look at this art, and you don't have to scratch your chin and know what it's about. You know what it's about, you know, and but hopefully there's a message there that's different, and it is about painting this in a new color. It's not just a grey statistics news article that you don't really know what to do with. It's like, oh, maybe I can actually do what I enjoy, an expression to at least tell a new story, at least kind of give someone else that.
Right.
So that for me is like, I won't even debate anyone in like how inherent like art and those things are to get people moving. Not only people who want to be activated and you know, stop sleeping in and feeling shit about everything. Yeah. But also people who are experiencing problems and some of the people I meet, for sure, I just have seen the way that, you know, you stick a paintbrush in someone's hand or you know, like whether it's a guitar or whatever. The value in like those things for immediate connection to something is...
You can express yourself.
Yeah.
Something, you can push stuff through you, and there's a
like
way of, you know, things come through that process, whether they're ideas or connections or just different energy that comes through these processes. Yeah, I mean, I love that, and it's the thing, and I think it's the, you know, you can see the possibility in bringing more creativity into these conversations because that sort of more rational, logical way of doing stuff in our culture is not working. Yeah, it's like, and it's hard for, I think, for people to see again. You know, trying to understand where these things go. Where is your? But actually, you know, it is about, I think a lot of this is about energy and intention and new combinations of ideas and thinking, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And for me, it's the kind of, you know, you can't run before you walk as well. It's sort of like you if you give someone this, I understand that there's going to be steps that someone has to take to improve their life, to be a better member of society, for society and for themselves, and whether that's like, you know, getting this job and that training and this, and, you know, I mean, all of those things can come, but I just feel like also it's important to recognize, like, how do you actually open someone's door again in their life to, like, feeling like a valuable person again, feeling like they have meaning and purpose. Like, it's like there's different sections to that process, and I'd like to think that although I can't match someone in a debate for policies and budget and what's allocated here and there in this sector and that charity, you know, it's like, but I'd like to think it's an important role to realize that there's going to be somebody outside today who's like, I don't really want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here for whatever reason. Like, this is it for me. I'm calling it in, and I'm not saying, really, it's important to mention that I'm not saying I am the answer to that, but we can be. Like, I can work on today, like that is happening with so many people today, that the idea of like what the long-term solution is like they can't even see that for themselves.
So that's possibly the time's up hint. But if you're right with a bit of darts, we could just keep going for a few more minutes.
It's fine. Yeah, it's really, so like, to summarize, I think, you know, everyone has, like, I think a different role in what they can do and how they can help, and I just know that for me, finding the antidote to your helplessness today, that's kind of where I'm at with all this stuff, and I feel like I've seen how that can lead on and open the door and lead to so many other things. But you have to, like, that access point and that tipping point, like, that's what I'm interested in for people, and then they'll be on their own journey to do their own thing.
Yeah, and it makes me think, another thing I heard recently about doing good things, even the tiniest thing in a day really matters, because it, I think it was described as, I think it was Martin Luther King, but he said, it's just what keeps the universe going, right? It's like, it's like illness in a body. It's like, as long as there's more good cells than bad cells, you're healthy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, so like it, we often say to ourselves, oh yeah, but what can I really do? Or what? But actually, we need, like, this, just doing something. As I say, it could be as simple as just giving someone your attention or your time, or to give them whatever it may be. But I think I don't know, more and more I feel like this is really important. It's simple action, but it's important, and everyone does have a role in this.
Totally. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's been really interesting to talk more about it. I think, like, there's so many different, like, roots, and there's all these different threads that we're talking about that kind of cross together, and it's all to do with people. It all comes back to humans and the way we interact and kind of how we feel about one another. But I think the best advice I always give is, like, try having a day or a week if you can make it, but it's good to start with a day where literally you just go out and whatever you're doing that day, you still get on with your day. You have, like, as close as you can, zero, I don't want to say zero judgment. I think just how you said it, being present for as many people as you can that day. Just turn that dial in yourself to, you know what? I don't care where this person come from. I don't care. All of my opinions, I'm going to drop my opinions today, and I'm just going to see how present I can be for people today. And it sounds hippy dippy, and it sounds like it's an exercise that I just find is the healthiest one in my life. It's like when you drop your
have no judgment, basically.
Well, when you hold on to and you harbor all these things for people, when you realize that you can drop all of that, and it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean that you haven't got your wits and your instinct about you. It just means that you don't have to hang on to all these opinions you've had about people for years and years and years. If you get a few days of that going, something, I think, for me, really healthy happens to you, and it's almost a de-stress, and I think it's a good exercise for anyone. So
nice. I like that.
Yeah,
a day of suspending all judgments.
Yeah, and it sounds. I know, and in repeated, though, it sounds so kind of like, oh, nice one, mate. Yeah, lefty, bleeding heart. But it's just like, shit, like. It's so easy to do. I still check myself all the time to, like, not think certain things when I look about.
Yeah, right. This is the human. This is the practice, right, of being a human, because we're always going to have these parts of us that are sort of trying to tell us this, or to have a kind of a sense of what we feel is right, or what is wrong, or what is to be true in the world. Yeah, and I think it's
almost an interesting thing to do as a discipline. That's kind of how I look at it. Is like, if you're into discipline stuff, you're like going to, like, whatever that may be, like, whatever class or gym or whatever. Like, well, lots of us enjoy discipline in our life for different reasons and routine. It's like, I look at it like that sometimes. I'm like, it's just a good thing to try and discipline yourself for a day, to just go, just those triggers that happen, like, just try and switch them off and be present. And it's yeah, that's
I like that. I like that. So listen, what's next for Do Something for Nothing? What's the plans?
There is going to be, so Do Something for Nothing is a really, it's coming to the end of 2018, and 2019 looks like trying to link people up globally and in more of a cemented way online. I mean, at the moment, there are people who are engaged in this and involved in this, from, like, Sao Paulo, Brazil, to, like, Australia, to, this has gone out to, like, so many people. I was in India recently, and I see the way that already people have kind of engaged with this there, and it's like these little pockets start appearing for this globally, and it's about trying to harness that, and really getting people who want to be involved in this to sort of, almost as you were saying with Good for Nothing, like, champion this and kind of have chapters of this who are kind of working on the streets or whatever that may be, and inspiring more people. But I'm actually getting all this stuff together in a book and telling these stories, which will come out in some way and they'll be more tangible in the next year or so.
Nice.
And then there's these art shows, so it's called Light and Noise, and there's also events that we're going to be putting on, which will hopefully be more ways that not only Londoners but different people in different cities can say, okay, what is this and how can I get involved, and actually having an evening where we can broaden the conversation about people and the way we interact with one another, and actually just I think it's important to have those spaces to do that, to then get people involved in this and to really feel it.
Nice. And best way for people to sort of keep involved or get involved or know what you're doing?
So at the moment it's at Do Something for Nothing on Instagram, and that's where we share posts on the hashtag, and mine is at Joshua Coombes, and that's kind of where I do my thing, and the people I meet on the street, I'll tell their stories on Instagram, but it's Facebook as well, Do Something for Nothing, and they're the ways that at the moment really the best way to get involved is if you know someone who's doing something, and use the hashtag Do Something for Nothing, like and then it goes into a place where everyone can see it, and also then you can see other people who are involved in this, and it's kind of that community aspect online that we're really interested in, and it's amazing to see that happen. But that's that those posts are really the best way of doing that, like posting about people who are doing that, or yourself in your community, whatever your thing might be, and that's the best way to get involved right now.
Amazing. Joshua, thanks so much for this.
Thanks,
can I ask you this little question that I've so this podcast is called The Spaceship Earth, and the idea of the Spaceship Earth is that we're actually a life-giving rock flying through space right now, which I always find pretty awesome, and that there are no passengers, like we're all crew, we're all kind of need to be doing things to sort of keep this thing running. So if you were gonna what needs crew right now? Where would you put crew out in the world right now? Where would you encourage people to go or to do?
I'd say that, my advice for sure, or actually where we need crew and where we need people is I think it is out on the street, and I think it is in the community. Having said, of course, earlier that you have to use your skill to make it as beneficial as possible, it's also important to really go out and get out of your comfort zone with people. Like for me, the action of just listening, conversation that we've been talking about is the running theme. I think go out and talk to people who you don't usually, and listen to them and learn about you and that person, and that's almost like your charging station that I'm going to say on the spaceship. It's like charge yourself up, like go plug in and charge yourself up, because then you're going to have like the energy to go out and do whatever it is you're going to do. And that's how I look at it. It's like my source,
Amazing. Thanks, dude. That's really cool.
Nice one.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers. So there you have it. That was the epic Joshua Coombes. Do Something for Nothing. So I love that. It was great. It was great to chat to Joshua. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Do check him out. Check out all the feeds. Follow his hashtag, Do Something for Nothing. And get out on the streets. I think that was awesome. Get out, charge yourself up. Plug in. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. Go and chat to people. Go and listen. And that whole idea of, attention. Giving people attention is maybe the most generous thing we can do. I love that. And let's make 2019 a year of the gift. If we all start gifting what we're good at, man, crazy shit could happen. It could be like revolutionary. And check out goodfornothing.com as well. That's all. There's all stuff going on around the world with Good for Nothing, and more folks needed to pick that one up and run with it. That's good fun. Anyway, thank you for listening. If there's any questions, any thoughts, hit me up, Dan at danburgess.earth, or on Instagram at Dan Solos, on Twitter at Dan Solo. And feedback appreciated. Any questions? If you like what you're hearing, just give it a like or a cheeky review, or just share it with someone else. It's all good. I hope the festive season is a joyful one. Look after yourselves and those around you. There are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We are all crew. Until next time, peace and out.